ramifications that are taking place, and these ramifications are taking place today and now as the big corporations start planning for the future.
Yeah, Mark Potter with Hewlett Packard, and just to give some context as why is Hewlett Packard here today? Very, very important issue for us. Hewlett Packard, a multinational company, very much like Congressman Brady was discussing. 70% of our revenue comes from our non-U.S. affiliates. So you can see over two-thirds, or around two-thirds of our revenue comes from overseas. This is an incredibly important issue for Hewlett Packard. The other thing is Hewlett Packard is one of the largest employers here in the greater Houston area, and one of the largest employers in the state of Texas as well. Our largest site around the world is just north of here, just south of Tomball. And so, you know, why we're here with the Greater Houston Partnership and supporting Congressman Brady is to make sure that everyone is informed about this issue. Two things that I think are critically important is that we're in a world economy, and the competitiveness of the United States in that world economy is critically important. And the points that Hewlett Packard really wants to make today are that, first of all, we are very supportive of taking a step back with folks like Congressman Brady and looking at the overall corporate tax laws for multinationals, because it is antiquated and it is burdensome. If you look at who Hewlett Packard competes with around the world that don't have the high tax rates that we have here in the U.S. and aren't potentially subject to this double taxation, we're competing with folks like Lenovo, who are based out of China. We're competing with folks like Acer. We're competing with Siemens in Germany. We're competing with Sony. And so those companies are who we have to compete with on the worldwide basis. That said, because of our headquarters being here and the fact that much of the scale and scope of Hewlett Packard kind of starts here in the United States, even though two-thirds or approximately two-thirds of our sales are outside, close to 60% of our high-paying jobs are actually here in the United States. And so there's a tremendous benefit for us in the Houston area as well as the United States for us to be located here. So, you know, real issue for us. We very much support, as a company, the Congressman's efforts to really take a step back and look at how we can simplify this. We're paying one of the highest tax rates in the world because we're located here. And as a matter of fact, Japan just recently changed their tax laws, and the UK, in some legislation that they just passed in April, would mean that the United States stands alone in kind of this world tax system. And so, again, very, very supportive of the efforts and a very, very important issue to Hewlett Packard. And with that, I'm going to go turn it back over.
There seems to be a taint in Washington in terms of this deferral provision. Most companies make decisions on where to locate their operations based on their customers, like Hewlett Packard with 70% of their business outside the U.S. McDermott has 1/3 of our business is international, but that business generates about 2/3 of our profit. So, and we're in the heavy industry. We build offshore platforms. When we're building platforms in the Middle East, it doesn't make sense to build them in the U.S. given the cost to transport those goods overseas. So we have operations in the Middle East for the Middle East region. We have operations in Southeast Asia for Southeast Asia. So the decision to locate these operations and earn the money outside the U.S. is not a tax-driven decision. It's one that's based on economics. Tax plays into that decision, and the tax is another expense that we have to incur in where we locate those operations. So we might choose a lower tax jurisdiction in the Middle East compared to others in the Middle East, but the decision to go to the Middle East is one that we make from a business perspective, irrespective of tax. And when you look at the overall profits of the company and your responsibility to the shareholders, if the taxes are increased because you now have to, all your earnings are now going to be taxed at a higher tax, the higher 35% U.S. tax rate, then the economics are such that you now have to make a different decision. Whereas before, if you had a 25% effective tax rate because you happen to have operations internationally in a lower tax jurisdiction, if you're now subject to a 35% tax on those profits, you now have 10% less profit that the company has earned for the benefit of the shareholders and for the benefit of the employees. So corporate executives are going to be expected to maintain their responsibilities to the shareholders, maximize their profits, and if you have increase in tax expense, the money is going to have to come from somewhere else. And the easiest cost for most companies to cut is headcount and jobs and salaries. So if the decision is that your expenses are increased because of tax, and that's just another line item in the P&L, you're going to have to make tough decisions, and ultimately that will ultimately end up costing jobs in some form or for another. Whether it's a reduction of jobs purely because you have to manage your business with less headcount, or it's a migration of those jobs out of the U.S. to a lower cost jurisdiction, the decisions are going to have to be made. I mean, it's going to be a tough decision to make, but a higher tax rate and subjecting your worldwide profits to the U.S. tax would likely cause most companies to make those tough decisions. And so we're very much in support of the deferral provisions, and there's several other provisions that are in the international realm that we're not even speaking about that also would have the same impact of increasing the effective tax rate on U.S. companies, and that would ultimately cost U.S. jobs. And I'm certain that we, along with many other companies, would have to make those decisions if that were to come to pass. So, good. Thank you, Ron.
Like others, I will, I guess, bark somewhat about the tax system. But before I do that, there is something good that is affecting us, and I want to compliment the Congressman. The research tax credit is a very important thing for Texas Instruments. We're very research intensive. Most of it goes on right here in the U.S., some of it overseas. And he has taken a leadership role in getting this credit extended one more time. So we hope that we'll see that extended when it expires at the end of this year, and that's been very helpful to us. So talking and turning to the international provisions that we talked about, we've heard a lot of dialogue about competitiveness, and it really gets down to cost. And that's what the competitiveness issue is. And it's an issue where we have facilities, and there is a proposal where the guy across the street who might be owned by a Swiss holding company or a Chinese company, they will not have this new cost that we're going to have. And it really gets down to a cost issue. Just like if we were getting a higher utility cost or a higher rent cost than the guy across the street, it makes us uncompetitive. The nature of our industry, and I might add, some folks may not understand this, but the semiconductor industry is primarily made up of two stages of manufacturing. There's wafer fabrication, and then there is the assembly test, where the wafers are turned into chips and encapsulated and tested. We have to do the assembly test close to a customer. We have to be co-located with them. We have to be there to promise them our logistical support. They want to know about lead times. They want to know about cycle time of manufacturing. And we've got to do that. We've been around since 1930. We've been a global company since before World War II, the late 1930s. We became global at that time in a geophysical survey business. We've been around a long time. Our operations overseas are substantial. We are troubled by getting commingled in some of the rhetoric with people who were hiding personal assets in a foreign jurisdiction or from their ex-spouse. We have very substantial operations. Most of the large multinational companies that I deal with had very substantial international operations. And we are very troubled by being thrown into a category of people that are just outright tax cheats. Let me talk about two aspects of competition. One for us would be, well, I'm sorry, let me back up. I talked about two stages of manufacturing. The bulk of our wafer fabrication manufacturing takes place right here in Texas, by far the majority of it. Then products are sent overseas, they're semi-finished, and they are assembled, in places close to our customers. Texas has the largest semiconductor wafer manufacturing capacity in the U.S. It is not California, as many people believe. In fact, California is not even on the top list anymore. Arizona, New Mexico, Oregon, and Virginia are the places that have the capacity. But people tend not to think about it, but the concentration in the U.S. of wafer manufacturing capacity is right here in Texas. And the job and the economics are complementary. That is, if we go increase our investment overseas and we increase our capacity overseas and we hire more people overseas, that is not displacing a U.S. worker. If that capacity goes up, it means the capacity here is going up also. These are entirely complementary manufacturing processes. Now, competition. Like other companies, we worry about having cost imposed on us in our international operations that is not imposed on a competitor. And that would be a foreign competitor owned with a full line of manufacturing and design and development and customer service. But additionally, in our industry, we have a community of companies that we call fabless. They do not have any manufacturing facilities. They completely outsource their manufacturing facilities. They're good companies, they're competitive companies, highly respected companies, but they do not manufacture themselves. They outsource all that. Where do you think that outsourcing is today? Both the wafer fabrication and the assembly test. It is outside the U.S. It is done by independent companies who do not design devices, they don't market devices. They simply wait for a fabless company to come to them and say, will you manufacture this? These are the specs, can you manufacture it for us? It is a pure outsourced manufacturing business strategy. Those people that use that strategy, even though they're U.S. companies, they're going to have access to lower cost facilities than we do because they're going to be having their wafers fabricated in Taiwan. They're going to be having their products assembled in other places like Ireland or in Malaysia or Singapore. And they're going to have access to lower cost facilities both on that front end and the back end. And they're going to receive that benefit because they do not own manufacturing facilities and they're not manufacturing in the U.S. That is a second form of competitiveness that we have to deal with. And again, I'm not criticizing our colleagues that are out there who have outsourced all of their manufacturing. We still do our manufacturing. That is good for this country. And it's good for us. We think we have a competitive advantage in doing that, but we have to face the reality that others are going to have access to lower cost facilities, even though they are U.S. companies. And so, if there are any questions, I'll be glad to kind of go through that. But I think at the end of the day, what we're really talking about is cost competitiveness.